My son kicked me out of the house, saying I was just another mouth to feed. Not even my grandkids defended me. I called the bank and froze their account. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought my own son would throw me out like garbage. But there I was, standing in the living room I had helped furnish, listening to Robert tell me I was just another mouth to feed, while my grandchildren sat frozen on the couch, staring at their plates. The words hit me like a physical blow. After 72 years on this earth, after raising him alone when his father died, after sacrificing everything so he could have the life he wanted, this was how he saw me. A burden. "Mom, you need to understand something," Robert said, not even looking at me as he cut his steak. His voice was cold, businesslike, as if he was firing an employee instead of talking to the woman who gave him life. "Sarah and I have been discussing this for months. We can't keep supporting you anymore." Sarah, my daughter-in-law, nodded along like a bobblehead doll. She'd never liked me, not from the day Robert brought her home 15 years ago. I could see it in her eyes then, the calculation, the way she measured everything in terms of what it could give her. And now apparently I didn't measure up. Supporting me? The words came out as a whisper. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. "Robert, honey, I pay for this house. I pay the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries." He finally looked up, and the expression on his face was pure irritation, like I was a child who didn't understand simple math. "That's not the point, Mom. It's about space. About Sarah and the kids needing room to grow. About us being able to live our lives without having to worry about an elderly person in the house." An elderly person. Not his mother. Not Grandma Pamela. An elderly person. I glanced at my grandchildren, Emma, 16, and Michael, 14. They were looking everywhere except at me. Emma's face was red with embarrassment, but she didn't say a word. Michael was pushing food around his plate like his life depended on it. These children I had helped raise, who used to run to me when they scraped their knees or needed help with homework, now sat there like strangers. "Where exactly am I supposed to go?" I asked, proud that my voice didn't shake even though my hands were trembling. Sarah spoke up for the first time, her voice sugar-sweet and venomous. "There are lovely assisted living facilities nearby, Pamela. Places where you can be with people your own age, where you'll have activities and care if you need it." Assisted living. They wanted to warehouse me with strangers and pretend I didn't exist. After everything I had done, everything I had given up, this was my reward. I looked around the dining room, at the table I had bought when Robert got married, at the china cabinet filled with dishes I had collected over the years, at the family photos where my smile looked so genuine, so trusting. How naive I had been to think that love and sacrifice would be enough. "I see," I said quietly. "And when exactly do you need me to leave?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. Even he seemed to realize how heartless this was, but Sarah's influence had clearly won out. "Well, we were thinking maybe by the end of the month. That gives you time to find somewhere nice." The end of the month. 3 weeks to dismantle a lifetime. To find somewhere to go when the only home I had known for the past 15 years was being taken away by my own flesh and blood. I stood up slowly, my arthritis making my joints protest. "I understand," I said, though I understood nothing except that I had raised a stranger. "I'll start looking tomorrow." "Mom." Robert's voice softened just a fraction. And for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, he would remember who I was, what I meant to him. "It's not personal. It's just practical." Practical. That's what our relationship had become. Practical. I walked to my room like a woman in a trance, each step echoing in the sudden silence behind me. As I closed the door, I could hear Sarah's voice, bright and cheerful now that the unpleasant business was over. "Emma, sweetie, would you like some more potatoes?" Life was already moving on without me. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the suitcase I kept in the closet for the trips I never took anymore. The adventures I had put off to help raise someone else's children. My hands shook as I pulled it down and opened it on the bed. But as I started folding my clothes, something inside me shifted. A cold, quiet anger began to replace the hurt. They thought I was helpless, disposable. They had forgotten something very important. I walked to my dresser and pulled out the folder I kept in the bottom drawer. The one with all the important papers. Bank statements, mortgage documents, insurance policies. Everything that kept this family's comfortable life running smoothly. Everything that was in my name. Robert and Sarah had made a serious miscalculation. They saw a helpless old woman who needed to be managed and discarded. They forgot they were talking to the woman who had been quietly holding their world together for decades. As I packed my bag, I smiled for the first time all evening. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they were about to learn that getting rid of Pamela Richardson came with a price they had never imagined. The motel room smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of nowhere. This was what my life had become, a 72-year-old woman in a $50 a night room, exiled by her own son. But it wasn't just the physical discomfort that was eating at me. It was the memories flooding back, each one a reminder of how blind I had been to what Robert was becoming. I remembered the day David died. Robert was only 8, and he clung to me at the funeral like I was the only solid thing left in his world. "It's just you and me now, Mommy," he had whispered, his small hand gripping mine. I had promised him then that I would never let him down, that I would be everything he needed. What a fool I had been. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos, torturing myself with evidence of my own stupidity. There was Robert's high school graduation. I had worked double shifts for months to afford the party he wanted. College graduation. I had taken out a second mortgage to pay his tuition because he wasn't the scholarship type. His wedding. I had spent my entire retirement savings on that overpriced reception because Sarah insisted on having it at the country club. And there I was in every photo, beaming with pride at my accomplished son, never noticing the way he took everything for granted, never seeing how Sarah looked at me like I was something unpleasant she had to tolerate. The worst part was remembering how it started. Robert had been such a sweet child after David died. So grateful for everything I did. But somewhere along the way, gratitude had turned into expectation. The extra money I gave him for clothes became an allowance he demanded. The help with his homework became me doing it entirely while he played video games. The sacrifices I made with a smile became obligations I owed him simply for existing. When did "thank you, Mom" become "why can't you just handle it"? When did my little boy, who used to make me breakfast in bed with burnt toast and too sweet orange juice, become a man who couldn't even look at me when he threw me away? Sarah had accelerated the process, of course. From the moment she entered our lives, she made it clear that there wasn't room for two women in Robert's world. She was subtle at first, little comments about how young families need their space, and how older people sometimes don't understand modern parenting. But I saw what she was doing. She was erasing me one conversation at a time. I remember the day she convinced Robert to put the house in both their names, for tax purposes. I had been so proud that my son was thinking about such grown-up things. I signed the papers without reading them carefully, trusting that family meant something. What an expensive lesson that turned out to be. But even knowing all of this, even seeing the pattern so clearly now, what hurt most was the silence of my grandchildren. Emma and Michael weren't like Robert at his age. They were old enough to understand what was happening, old enough to speak up. But they had just sat there, letting their father discard me like I was nothing. I had been there when Emma took her first steps. I had taught Michael to ride a bike when Robert was too busy with work. I had helped with homework, attended every school play and soccer game, been the one who remembered their birthdays when their parents were distracted. And they had repaid me with silence. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Pamela, we need you to pick up your mail. The post office says you haven't changed your address yet." The casualness of it made my blood boil. As if I were just an old tenant who had overstayed her welcome, not the woman who had made their comfortable life possible. I typed back, "I'll handle it tomorrow." But as I hit send, I realized something. They still expected me to handle things. They still expected me to quietly manage the inconvenient details of my own exile, while they enjoyed the space my absence had created. I opened my purse and pulled out my bank card, the one connected to the account that paid for everything in their lives. The mortgage, the utilities, the car payments, even the credit cards they use for their daily expenses. All of it flowing from my Social Security, my pension, the inheritance I had received from my parents and never touched because I was too busy making sure Robert had everything he needed. They thought they were getting rid of a burden. They had no idea they were losing their lifeline. I picked up my phone and dialed the bank's customer service number. It was time to stop being the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing. It was time to become the woman who took back control. First National Bank. How can I help you today? Yes, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in days. I need to make some changes to my accounts. Several changes, actually. As I waited for the representative to pull up my information, I looked around the dingy motel room one more time. This might be where I was tonight, but it wouldn't be where I stayed. I had learned something valuable in the past 3 days. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who see you the least clearly. Robert and Sarah thought they knew who I was. A helpless old woman who would quietly fade away when dismissed. They were about to discover they had never really known me at all. The representative came back on the line. Mrs. Richardson? I have your accounts pulled up. What changes would you like to make today? I smiled as I began to speak. For the first time in years, I was about to put myself first. The bank representative was efficient and professional, as she helped me freeze every single account that had Robert or Sarah's name attached to it. Are you sure you want to remove all authorized users, Mrs. Richardson? She asked for the 3rd time. Completely sure, I said, watching the morning traffic through the motel window. I also want to cancel all automatic payments going to that address, and I need to change the primary account holder information on several loans. Took 2 hours. 2 hours to dismantle 15 years of financial entanglement, to cut the strings I had been pulling all this time without anyone noticing. The mortgage payments, the car loans, the credit cards, the insurance premiums. All of it had been flowing from my accounts while Robert and Sarah lived their comfortable lives, completely oblivious to who was actually footing the bill. By noon I was a free woman. By noon, they were about to become very surprised adults. I checked out of the motel and drove to a small apartment complex I had noticed across town. Nothing fancy but clean and quiet, with a manager who didn't ask too many questions when I paid 3 months' rent upfront in cash. It was a 1-bedroom unit on the 2nd floor, with a view of a parking lot and a small garden that someone actually cared for. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No one could throw me out of here. No one could make me feel unwelcome in my own space. I spent the afternoon at Target, buying the basics I needed to start over. Sheets, towels, a coffee maker, some groceries. Simple things, but each purchase felt like an act of rebellion. For the first time in decades, I was spending money on myself without feeling guilty about it. My phone had been buzzing all day, but I ignored it. I knew what those calls were about. The credit cards being declined, the automatic payments being rejected, the slow dawning realization that their comfortable world was built on a foundation they had just kicked out from under themselves. It wasn't until evening that I finally looked at my phone. 14 missed calls from Robert, 6 from Sarah, and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. Robert. Mom, there's some problem with the mortgage payment. Can you call the bank? Robert. The credit cards aren't working. Did you change something? Robert. Mom, call me back right now. Sarah. Pamela, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to fix whatever you did to our accounts. Sarah. This is ridiculous. We have children to think about. The last text had come in just 20 minutes ago. Mom, please. We need to talk. Something's wrong with everything. I poured myself a glass of the wine I had bought, a nice bottle, not the cheap stuff I used to get because I was always worried about money, and sat in my one chair, looking out at my mediocre view. Something was wrong with everything. Robert was finally right about something. My phone rang. Robert again. This time I answered. Mom. His voice was high, panicked. Thank God. Look, I don't know what's happening, but every single payment got rejected today. The mortgage, the cars, everything. The bank says there's a hold on the accounts or something. Can you call them and straighten this out? I took a sip of my wine. It was actually quite good. There's nothing to straighten out, Robert. I removed you and Sarah from my accounts. Silence. Then. What do you mean you removed us? I mean exactly what I said. You wanted me out of your house because I was a burden, so I'm out of your finances too. Seems only fair. Mom, you can't just... This is crazy. How are we supposed to pay for anything? The same way other adults do, I thought. But what I said was, that sounds like a you problem, honey. But Mom, the house payment is due tomorrow. And Sarah's car payment and the insurance and... Robert, I interrupted, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Let me ask you something. When you told me I was just another mouth to feed, Did you think about where the food money was coming from? Another silence. I could practically hear the wheels turning in his head, finally adding up numbers he had never bothered to notice before. You're being vindictive, he said finally. This isn't like you. You're right, I agreed. The old me would have quietly found somewhere to live and kept paying your bills because I was afraid of losing you. But guess what? I lost you anyway. So now I'm going to try being the kind of person who doesn't pay for the privilege of being treated like garbage. Mom, please. We can work this out. Maybe we were hasty about the living situation. Maybe we can find a compromise. A compromise. Now that he realized his comfortable life was about to disappear, suddenly he wanted to negotiate. What kind of compromise? I asked, curious to see how quickly his tune would change. Well, maybe you could stay in the guest room sometimes. Like visits. And we could all sit down and figure out a budget that works for everyone. Visits. To the house I had been paying for. How generous of him. That's a very interesting offer, Robert, I said. But I think I'm going to pass. You're going to pass? His voice cracked like a teenager's. Mom, you can't do this to us. What about Emma and Michael? What about their college funds? What about them indeed? Robert, let me ask you something else. When you threw me out, did Emma or Michael say anything to defend me? He was quiet. Did either of your children who I helped raise, who I've supported their entire lives, say one word about how you were treating me? They're just kids, Mom. They don't understand adult situations. Emma is 16 and Michael is 14. They're old enough to understand cruelty when they see it. And they chose to stay silent. I could hear Sarah in the background, her voice sharp and urgent, though I couldn't make out the words. Sarah wants to talk to you, Robert said. I'm sure she does. But I don't want to talk to her. In fact, I don't want to talk to any of you right now. Mom, you're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this. I looked around my small, peaceful apartment, at the life I was building that no one could take away from me, and I smiled. You know what, Robert? I think you're the one who's going to regret this. But don't worry, you'll figure it out. After all, you're both adults, right? You don't need an old woman taking up space in your life. I hung up before he could respond and turned off my phone. Outside, the sun was setting, painting my mediocre view in shades of gold and pink. It was the most beautiful sunset I had seen in years. For 3 blissful days my phone stayed off. I had forgotten what silence felt like, what it was like to wake up without immediately worrying about someone else's problems. I went grocery shopping without calculating whether I could afford both the name brand cereal and the good coffee. I bought flowers for my small kitchen table just because they made me happy. But on the 4th day, curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on. 67 missed calls. 43 text messages. 2 voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize, which turned out to be collection agencies already circling like vultures. The texts were a timeline of escalating panic. Day 1, Robert. Mom, please call back. We need to fix this. Day 2, Sarah. Pamela, this is getting ridiculous. We have bills due. Day 3, Robert. The bank is calling about the mortgage. You have to help us. Day 3, Sarah. Fine. You win. You can come back. Just fix the money situation. Day 4, Robert. Mom, they're threatening foreclosure proceedings. This isn't a game anymore. I was reading through them, marveling at how quickly you need to leave had become you need to help us. When my phone rang. Robert again. This time I answered on the first ring. Hello, Robert. Jesus, Mom, finally. Look, we need to meet. In person. This has gone too far. Has it? I sipped my good coffee and watched a cardinal land on my fire escape. What exactly has gone too far? You know what? This whole financial thing. You're punishing us because your feelings got hurt, but you're hurting the kids too. Is that really what you want? Ah, there it was. The kids. The nuclear option in every family guilt trip. Tell me, Robert, how exactly am I hurting Emma and Michael? Well, if we lose the house, they'll have to change schools. And Emma's been looking at colleges, and Michael's in travel soccer, and you're their father, I interrupted. It's your job to provide those things for them, not mine. But Mom, you know I'm between jobs right now, and Sarah's business is just getting started, and between jobs. Robert was 43 years old and had been between jobs for the better part of 2 years. Sarah's business was selling overpriced jewelry online to her friends, which brought in maybe $300 a month on a good month. Robert, let me ask you something. Do you even know how much money I've been giving you every month? Silence. Do you know what the mortgage payment is? The car payments? Insurance? Utilities? More silence. You don't, do you? You've never had to know because I've been handling it all. But here's what's about to happen. You're going to learn exactly what things cost, and you're going to figure out how to pay for them like every other adult in America. Mom, that's not fair. You're our family. Family helps each other. You're absolutely right, I said. Family does help each other. They also don't throw each other out like garbage when it becomes inconvenient to help. I heard Sarah's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. Robert covered the phone, but I could still hear the muffled argument. When he came back, his voice was different. Harder. Sarah says to tell you that we have lawyers in the family. If you're trying to steal our house or something, we can fight this. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Steal your house? Robert, honey, whose name is on the deed? Another silence. A longer one this time. That's right, I continued. Mine. Just like the cars are in my name and the insurance policies and the credit cards. You want to call lawyers? Go ahead. But you might want to ask them exactly what legal ground you have to stand on, when everything you think you own actually belongs to someone else. You can't just take everything away from us. Sarah's voice came through the phone. She had clearly grabbed it from Robert. We have rights. We have children. Sarah, I said pleasantly, you have exactly the rights that I gave you when I foolishly trusted you with access to my accounts. And now I've taken them back. As for the children, well, they have parents. Parents who should probably figure out how to take care of them. You're a bitter old woman, she spat. No wonder your son wanted you out of his house. That stung, but not the way she intended it to. Instead, it clarified something for me. You know what, Sarah? You're absolutely right. I am bitter. I'm bitter about wasting 15 years of my life enabling two grown adults to live like children. I'm bitter about sacrificing my own happiness to fund yours. But mostly, I'm bitter about being stupid enough to think that love and generosity would be appreciated, instead of taken for granted. I heard Robert take the phone back. Mom, please. Can we just meet somewhere and talk about this like adults? Like adults. I repeated. Robert, adults don't ask their elderly mothers to support them financially, and then throw them out when they become inconvenient. Adults don't let their children watch their grandmother get humiliated without saying a word. Adults take responsibility for their own lives. Fine, he said, and his voice was getting angry now. Fine. But when you're sitting alone in whatever dump you're living in now, don't come crying to us. Don't expect us to take care of you when you get sick, or when you can't manage on your own anymore. The threat was clear. Be our ATM or be alone. Robert, I said softly, I am alone. I've been alone since the day you decided I was expendable. The only difference now is that I'm alone without paying for the privilege. I was about to hang up when I heard a car door slam outside my building. Then another. I looked out my window and felt my blood run cold. Robert's car was in the parking lot. Sarah was getting out of the passenger side, and behind them, Emma and Michael were climbing out of the back seat. Robert, I said carefully, where are you right now? We're coming up to talk to you, he said. Mrs. Chun at the post office told us where you were staying. We brought the kids so we could all work this out together. They had tracked me down. They had brought my grandchildren as human shields. And from the look on Sarah's face as she marched toward my building, this wasn't going to be a friendly conversation. I watched them approach my door and realized that the peaceful part of this war was about to end. The knock on my door was sharp and impatient. I took a deep breath, smoothed my hair, and opened it to find my family standing in the hallway like an unwelcome delegation. Robert looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. Sarah stood behind him with her arms crossed, her face set in angry lines. But it was my grandchildren who broke my heart. Emma's eyes were red-rimmed, and Michael was staring at his shoes like he wished he could disappear into them. We need to talk, Robert said, pushing past me into my small apartment. Sarah followed, her eyes scanning my modest living space with undisguised disdain. This is where you're living now? Pamela, this is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Emma and Michael hung back in the doorway until I gestured them inside. They sat on my small couch like they were afraid to touch anything. "So," Robert said, not bothering to sit down, "here's what's going to happen. You're going to call the bank and fix whatever you did to our accounts. Then we're all going to go home and pretend this little tantrum never happened." I looked at him, this stranger wearing my son's face, and marveled at his audacity. "Or what? Or you'll never see your grandchildren again," Sarah said smoothly. "We'll make sure of that." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Emma made a small sound, almost like a whimper, and Michael's head snapped up, his eyes wide with something that looked like panic. "Is that what you want?" I asked quietly, looking at Emma and Michael. "Do you want me to disappear from your lives?" Before either of them could answer, Robert stepped forward. "What they want doesn't matter. They're children. Sarah and I make the decisions about who they spend time with, and if you're going to be vindictive and destructive, then we can't have you around them." "Dad, stop," Emma said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Robert turned to her, his expression sharp. "Emma, we talked about this. Grandma is going through something right now, and she's not thinking clearly." "But she's not wrong," Michael said, his voice stronger than his sister's. "Is she?" The room went dead silent. Sarah's mouth opened, then closed. Robert stared at his son like Michael had just spoken in a foreign language. "What did you say?" Robert asked slowly. Michael stood up, his teenage height making him nearly as tall as his father. "I said she's not wrong. About the money. About how you treated her." His voice was shaking, but he didn't back down. "I'm not stupid, Dad. I know you don't work. I know Mom's jewelry thing doesn't pay for anything. I know Grandma has been taking care of us." "Michael, you don't understand adult situations," Sarah started, but Emma cut her off. "Yes, we do," Emma said, standing up next to her brother. "We understand that you threw Grandma out because you didn't want to take care of her, but you still expected her to take care of us. We understand that you used her and then got mad when she stopped letting you." I felt tears prick my eyes. My grandchildren, the ones who had sat silent through my humiliation, were finally finding their voices. "That's enough," Robert said, his voice rising. "Both of you get back in the car. Now." "No," Michael said simply. "Excuse me." I said, "No, Dad. I'm not going anywhere. I want to stay with Grandma." "Me too," Emma added, moving closer to her brother. "We should have said something that night. We should have defended you, Grandma. We were cowards and we're sorry." Robert looked like someone had slapped him. "You are both grounded for a month when we get home. Get in the car immediately." "Ground us for what?" Emma asked. "For telling the truth? For not wanting to watch you manipulate someone anymore. For being disrespectful to your parents," Sarah snapped. "For buying into your grandmother's lies." "What lies?" Michael demanded. "That you don't work? That's not a lie. That you spend money you don't earn? Also not a lie. That you told her she was a burden and threw her out? We were sitting right there, Mom. We heard everything." I watched this confrontation unfold with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. My grandchildren were showing more backbone than I had ever seen from them, but I could see the cost in their faces. Standing up to your parents when you're still a teenager takes everything you have. "Kids," I said gently, "it's okay. You don't have to fight my battles for me." "But we want to," Emma said, tears streaming down her face. "We've watched Dad take advantage of you our whole lives. We've watched Mom treat you like you were nothing. And that night, when they told you to leave, we just sat there because we were scared and we didn't know what to do. But we're not scared anymore." Robert was staring at his children like he had never seen them before. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I have sacrificed everything for this family." "What have you sacrificed?" Michael asked. "Your job? You didn't have one. Your money? You never had any. Your time? You were always playing golf or hanging out with your friends while Grandma helped us with homework and drove us to practices." "I think we should all calm down," Sarah said, but her voice was shaky now. The unified front she and Robert had presented was crumbling in front of a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old who had finally decided to stop playing along. "No," Emma said. "We're not calming down. We're not pretending anymore. Grandma, we want to stay with you tonight. We want to help you move somewhere better. We want to be part of your life in a way that actually matters." Robert's face was getting red. That is not happening. You are both minors, and you will do what I tell you to do. Or what? Michael asked. You'll throw us out too? The question hung in the air like an accusation. And in that moment I saw something shift in Robert's face. A flicker of uncertainty, of recognition that maybe, just maybe, his children were old enough to make their own choices about who they wanted in their lives. We're staying, Emma said firmly. Tonight anyway. Mom and Dad, you can go home and figure out how to pay your own bills for once. Robert opened his mouth to argue, but Sarah grabbed his arm. Let's go, she said quietly. This isn't working. As they moved toward the door, Robert turned back one more time. This isn't over, Mom. We'll figure something out. We always do. Yes, you will, I agreed. You'll figure out how to be adults. After they left, I sat on my couch with my grandchildren on either side of me, all of us emotionally drained but somehow lighter than we had been in years. Grandma, Emma said softly, we're really sorry. We should have stood up for you from the beginning. I pulled them both closer. You stood up for me when it mattered most, I said. And that's all I needed. Outside, I could hear Robert's car starting up, driving away into a future where he would finally have to take responsibility for his own life. Inside, I was surrounded by the family that had chosen me, just as I was learning to choose myself. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new house, a modest 3-bedroom place with a garden I could actually tend, watching Emma help Michael with his calculus homework at the dining table I had chosen myself. The house wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Mine legally, and theirs in every way that mattered. The transition hadn't been easy. Robert and Sarah had fought the custody arrangement at first, threatening lawyers and making claims about parental rights. But when the family court judge asked Emma and Michael where they wanted to live, their answers were swift and unwavering. And when the judge learned about the financial dynamics of the situation, about 2 adult parents who had never supported themselves expecting a 72-year-old woman to fund their lifestyle, the decision became even clearer. Grandma, do you have any more of those oatmeal cookies? Michael called from the table. In the jar on the counter, I called back, smiling as I watched him get up to get them himself. Such a small thing, but it represented everything that had changed. In the old house, he would have asked me to get them for him, and I would have, because that's what I thought love looked like. Now I knew better. Emma had blossomed since moving in with me. She was applying to colleges now, and she actually talked to me about her choices instead of just expecting me to write checks. We had established a college fund money from the sale of my half of Robert's house, and she knew exactly how much was available and what her options were. She was learning to make decisions based on reality, not entitlement. Michael had joined the debate team at school and was thriving. Turns out, standing up to your parents in defense of your grandmother was excellent preparation for competitive arguing. He was also working a part-time job at the local bookstore, saving money for a car. The first car he would buy with his own money, not something handed to him. My phone rang and I glanced at the caller ID. Robert. He called every few weeks now, usually when money got tight. I let it go to voicemail as I always did. Later, I listened to the message while the kids did their homework. His voice was different now, smaller somehow, less certain of his place in the world. Hi, Mom. It's me. Look, I know things are complicated between us, but I was wondering if maybe we could have dinner sometime, just to talk. Sarah and we're working things out, separately. She moved in with her sister last month. Anyway, I got a job. It's just retail, but it's something. I thought maybe you'd want to know. I deleted the message and put the phone back in my purse. Maybe someday I would be ready for that conversation. Maybe someday Robert would be ready to have it for the right reasons. But not yet. Grandma. Emma looked up from her college applications. Can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Do you ever miss it? The way things used to be. I considered the question carefully. Did I miss the big house with all its expensive furniture? Did I miss the family dinners where I did all the cooking and cleaning while everyone else took it for granted? Did I miss feeling needed in ways that slowly drained the life out of me? I missed the illusion, I said finally. I miss believing that sacrifice would be appreciated, that generosity would be returned with love instead of demands for more generosity. But I don't miss the reality of it. Michael looked up from his math book. Dad called me yesterday. He wanted to know if we were happy here. if we missed our old life. What did you tell him? I told him that I missed the pool, Michael said with a grin. But I didn't miss feeling like I owed someone something all the time. I didn't miss watching him treat you badly and not knowing how to stop it. Emma nodded. It's weird, but I feel like I can breathe here. Like I can be myself without worrying about whether I'm being grateful enough or perfect enough. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat in my garden with a cup of tea, looking at the flowers I had planted myself. They weren't expensive or exotic, just simple perennials that would come back year after year without requiring constant attention. A year ago, I had been living in a house I paid for but didn't own, taking care of people who saw me as a convenience rather than a person. I had been wealthy in everything except respect, generous with everything except boundaries. Now I lived modestly but peacefully. My bank account was smaller, but it was mine. My house was smaller, but no one could throw me out of it. My family was smaller, but everyone in it was there by choice. I thought about Sarah living with her sister now, probably complaining about how unfair it all was. I thought about Robert working retail for the first time in his adult life, finally learning what it felt like to earn what you spent. I wondered if he was angry, or if some part of him was relieved to finally know what he was capable of when he had to depend on himself. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Grandma, thank you for showing us what it looks like to choose yourself. I want to be brave like you when I grow up. I smiled and typed back. You already are, sweetheart. You already are. As I locked up the house and turned off the lights, I realized something that would have surprised the woman I used to be. I wasn't lonely. For the first time in decades, I was alone without being lonely, surrounded by people who chose to be with me instead of people who needed things from me. I had learned that there's a difference between being loved and being useful. I had learned that sometimes the most generous thing you can do is stop giving. And I had learned that it's never too late to teach people how to treat you, even if the lesson costs you everything you thought you wanted. In the end, Robert had been right about one thing. I was just another mouth to feed. But what he never understood was that I was also the one who had been doing all the feeding. And now, finally, I was nourishing myself. The house was quiet, peaceful, and completely mine. Outside my bedroom window, I could see the small garden where my flowers would bloom again next spring, hardy and resilient and beautiful. Just like me.